time, I think she would have given us much more of a run for our money. But subsequent to that, we then were able to start deploying fiber throughout the city of Seattle, and now we're providing gigabit speed to a lot of homes. And on top of that, we were able to secure a cable franchise, which Swant did vote yes. Yay, thank you for her. And that allows us now to deliver our IPTV product that we call Prism TV. So I look at, 5 or 6 years ago, we couldn't do anything in this city, and now we're able to deliver gigabit and Prism TV to a city of Seattle. So, really, really interesting learnings. And I tell you, public policy folks, like, they just are worth their weight in gold in my eyes. And I didn't come with that background. I'm not trained in that. So I had a lot of learning opportunities with our public policy team that they're like, watch and learn. Here's what we need you to do. Here's what we need you to say. And just going through that whole process was really interesting too, because there's so much politics behind it. And who do we need to talk to first? And which staff people do we need to talk to? Because they're really the ones that are chirping in the ears of the council people. This is going on, would brief them up, we need you to say yes, we need you to vote no. They were really, really instrumental. So always be nice to the staff people.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I follow?
I was just going to say thank you.
Can I follow up and ask, how did you structure your team internally to manage that process? I imagine not just Seattle CenturyLink, but we're talking about nationally is very interested. I think you said Monroe, Louisiana, asked the question.
Yes, absolutely.
So how did you manage that process?
Yeah, so we really had to do an education process with corporate back in Monroe as to, why are we here? And they're like, so how are we going to get this road gym kicked out of the way? And previously at Quest at the time, we had some public policy folks, but they didn't do a lot in local government. CenturyLink had some really great public policy folks that were really big into local government. And so it was pulling those folks in, and they're like, we know how to do this. Here's all of the steps that we need to take along the way. And here are the folks that we need to help carry the message. And quite frankly, when we started talking to the leadership back in Monroe about, okay, here's the things that we're doing, here's the roadblocks, the great thing is they understood that it wasn't going to be done in a day, that it takes time and takes process. And a lot of it was continually updating too. What's the status? Where are we at? What have we been able to tick off, and what do we still have on the roadmap and agenda before we can actually start moving forward? And then honestly, once we had those rules that were changed, we also had the influx of capital that the leadership was willing to invest in the city. When we're kind of at an impasse, they're like, don't spend a ton of money in Seattle because you're not doing anything with it. So put it into a Portland, put it into a Denver, put it into Spokane, but don't spend a ton of money in Seattle. That also gave us great talking points to the city to say, we've not invested in this city because of X, Y, and Z. So, you want the city to move forward, but unless you're going to do it, you need to give us the opportunity to spend some money.
That's a great lesson. Cities are always wanting to know what other cities are doing.
Sure.
And they feel like if somebody else is doing something, they're falling behind. So they tend to jump on those things. That's just coming from the city.
Exactly.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a follow-up. So it sounds like, I can imagine that with all these different stakeholders that you're working with communities, you're working with government, you're working with other partners, that using storytelling as a way to show people where you're going and the vision for where you're headed and why it's beneficial for them to get on board. Can you maybe give an example of how you use that just in your own personal style, with whether it be with your teams or in particular, towards particular goals, how you use storytelling to bring people along?
Absolutely. So, and let me just answer first how we use the storytelling too. One of the things that also is very impactful is visuals. So we actually made some visual maps for the city council folks to show where we had deployment and speed and where we didn't. And it was a pretty blank map. It was, a little spot here, a little spot here, a little spot there. And that was really impactful for them when you sit down and show them, you live here and there's nothing around here. And in storytelling, one of the other things that we had to do was just with my team and our technicians as well, helping them to know the answers and the stories, because, here they're out talking to customers and the customer would say, I want higher speed internet. How come you can't provide that to me? They really needed some talking points and some answers. So we shared those same maps with the technicians and helped them to understand, here's the journey that we're on. And here's what I need you folks as field technicians to do. I need you to provide the best service possible, and you need to tell them, talk to your council people. Tell them that you want higher speed internet and help carry the message out there. And when we started giving our field technicians the understanding what the roadblocks were and how they could help, they were more than willing to have the appropriate conversations rather than just grousing and complaining about it and why isn't the company doing anything. Once we shared with them the story and the journey that we were on, it was like a whole different attitude, like, oh, okay, you're trying to make a difference. You're trying to provide more opportunities for us. We get it. We'll help you carry that water. Even our union presidents were like, do you want us to come talk to the city? We'll come talk to them on behalf and from a union, these are union jobs perspective. So it was great when you can get everybody kind of moving in that same direction. But it's definitely a story that everybody has to kind of understand the story and the storyline versus just, sometimes we're quick to just give some bullets out there of, here's your 3 talking points, and it doesn't tell enough of how you got there and where you're going.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate just a little bit on the storytelling from an internal standpoint with your team?
Sure. So, the storytelling for the internal team was really walking them through the roadblock and where was it and why the roadblock was there. And then part of the storytelling was helping them to understand, we're spending this time, honestly, it was almost on a daily basis, we're spending this time down at City Hall. Here's what the story is. Here is what we're trying to communicate, and basically giving them the same sales pitch, if you will, that we were giving to City Council. So it wasn't a different story. It was really the same story because they kind of knew it and were living it. They're like, yeah, that box over there on 35th that I keep driving by that's broken, when are we going to fix that? Okay, here's how that plays into the story. We're trying to tell the city that, things are broken out there. It's bad customer service. We're trying to fix it. And so once they started to understand that, they were like, oh, okay, I understand. I understand kind of where I fit into that story too. Because that's one of the things I found. If they don't understand how they fit into the equation, they feel like they're not part of the equation. So helping them to understand, where is their part in this as well.
Did you get bogged down at any point with any of the stakeholders?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
yeah, it was like a 2.5-year process.
I see.
So it was, and as most of you know, nothing happens fast in city government. So I would actually call that a win. But there were times where even some of the city council people would say, yes, I'm on board. And then they would be like, but I'm going to have to hear from Mrs. Smith again about that box that's in front of her house that she's talking to me every single day. And then, we started to actually getting into some further discussions about, can we be creative? What are some creative solutions? And then they started asking us, can you paint them? Can you put them a different color? Can you wrap them? Can you put trees and shrubs and things around them? And so, of course, the answer was yes, yes, and yes. And then we committed to that we would actually go work with the closest homeowner and talk to them about what did they want to see. Did they want shrubs around it? Did they want it wrapped? Did they want it painted a darker green versus a lighter green? And now that I say that, as you're walking around kind of different towns and areas, you will see things that are wrapped or, kind of disguised. That was sort of about that time when everybody was like, how do we disguise these things? Because let's be real, they're ugly. And we were always very, very forthright in that yeah, these aren't the most beautiful things, but you get a trade-off. Internet at home or no box.
And it was on private property or in right away?
In the right of way. Private property was
Okay.
a different story because then you're negotiating easements
Yes.
and, doing things with that individual homeowner, but it was truly the right of way.
Okay, great. So we're going to switch. Do you have a follow-up?
Oh, I was going to switch to the one thing that we kind of talked about in our working group was this concept of customer dissatisfaction. If you
Oh,
were to
yeah.
just talk about CenturyLink to friends or other folks that you
Sure.
know, and it's part of that is we all realize that we rely on the internet and broadband
Oh.
service as a utility essentially.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering your thoughts on weighing that kind of
Mhm.
piece in your professional career and knowing all of, you walked us through all the different
Right,
steps
right.
here that it takes to get that broadband to your homes.
Mhm. And you know what? And that is something that was front and center for a very long time, particularly, when we were out there placing boxes. you know, the naysayers would come out and just raise holy heck with the you know, construction workers
You're
out
destroying
there.
our
Are those
neighborhood.
homeowners
Yeah.
or organized groups? Or?
A little bit of both sometimes, and
Yeah.
oftentimes it was, I loved it, it was, oftentimes it would be the rental folks that would come out, not necessarily the homeowners, but the people renting. And then the next neighbor would come by and would say, it is about darn time, what are you doing, and when can I get your service? So we really found that we had, more demand out there, and a lot of feedback from our field technicians saying, you know, if we just went over there onto, you know, Green Lake, I hear from people every day that they want better, faster, or higher internet speed. So we had more people that were saying, do something, than those that were not. And those that were not fans, those are the ones that, you know, we'd have to just have communication with, try to help them understand what we were doing. And they were like, well, we have Comcast, why do we need, you know, 2 or 3, or we have Wave, why do we need you here as well? And, you know, some of it is opportunity to compete. Competition brings, you know, better prices and choices for consumers, so helping to explain that. And then there were some that were just like, I don't like it. Okay, well, you know, it can't please everybody, but we felt we had more pent-up demand in the city than we had people that were naysayers. But it's a balance, and you would find it every day. Some folks would be out and they'd be like, yay, you're here finally, and others would be like, you know, staging their cars in front of it so the, you know, the concrete trucks and things couldn't pull up, and it's like, oh, for heaven's sakes.
But do you have any like messaging that you would talk with the technicians or the dispatch specifically, or it's kind of handled on an individual basis? Or?
So the first thing we always, you'll love this, the first thing that, you know, that we always tell our technicians is, they are never, ever, ever to talk to the media, because they say all sorts of interesting things. And that they were always to be polite and talk to customers, and if customers were just raking them over the coals, that they were to get that to their managers or to myself, and that we would take that burden off of them. Because you folks know, you know, a customer, especially one that's mad and cranky, can tie you up into a 20-minute conversation just raking you over the coals, and they're like, I gotta serve that next customer.
Right.
So I'm like, get them to a manager, because quite frankly, they're gonna wanna talk to somebody higher in the organization anyways.
Yeah.
And we've always encouraged you, get it to a manager, get it to myself, let us deal with those, and you go on your day about, you know, providing service to the customers. And that seems to work really well. Some of my techs can talk anybody off any ledge, and others are like, oh my gosh, what do I say to this woman that's screaming at me here and now? So we try to take that burden off them and put it back upstream into a manager's hands, really where it should be.
That might be a good follow-up for the retention question that you had, Brian.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guess one of the other ideas we talked about is the managing tensions within CenturyLink, like this idea of inspiring energy with your team and getting everybody kind of moving forward with this public perception issue or customer dissatisfaction issue. And actually the way you're describing it to me makes it sound a lot more intimate than I would have thought before this conversation. So I was wondering if there's tools that you have to continue or like establish that intimacy early on with your technicians.
Yes, and a lot of it is just transparency and
Right.
being visible and in front of them. And I'll tell you, this is one of my struggles right now, is having the whole state, having that opportunity to go and sit down and talk to all of the field technicians. I get out at least once a year to every garage. We have 52 garages, so it's a lot. I try to get out, you know, twice is always my goal, but I finally have went, okay, you have 2 little kids, you have to be a realist, you can't be on the road every single day. But a lot of it is just getting out and having very frank conversations and being transparent and letting them ask lots of questions while you're there. To answer your question further, we have had the great opportunity numerous times when Get Jesse was at King 5. He loved to do CenturyLink stories. Okay, King 5's on my Comcast, so that just helps set the stage.
Has that died off now that he's at Channel 7?
Yeah, it has. Channel 7 has reined him in. Yeah, very much so. But he would just love to come sit here in the boardroom and be like, okay, so we understand. We're doing a story tonight. Let's chat. Now, Jesse is a person, I don't know if any of you have ever met him out just like socially. He's the coolest guy you'd ever want to spend time with. He's nice, he's funny, he's great. But camera goes on and he's like, get Jesse here. Yes, all business. And of course, he's the gotcha guy. So he would come, he would tape stories about whatever it was. And of course, the goal is always to keep him out of here and not on TV. But there were times where we're like, okay, we have to defend ourselves. And, you know, he never spends it in a in a beautiful light, and he always is the hero at the end of the day. You have the same issue, you call me. I will take on CenturyLink. So those news stories would run, and the next day I would get like 100 emails from people of like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, Jesse's after us. How can you let this happen? You know, how come he was so mean to you? And they have so much passion about Jesse is attacking our company. What are we doing about this?
Right.
So generally, the next day we would have, you know, kind of our talking points of, okay, you saw the story. He only ran what he wanted to run. Here's the rest of the story as we know it. You know, if you're getting questions, inquiries, send them back. But you had to also kind of acknowledge the emotion, because I'm always the first one to have emotion of like, are you kidding me? Jesse's coming again. I'm not going on air with Get Jesse today. So I knew that emotion, and often I would reflect that to him. I'm like, you guys think that it's fun to watch Jesse on TV, like, you know, picking us apart? Be the one sitting in the chair when he's got the microphone. I said, that's not a really fun time either. So, you know, helping them to understand, you know, it was a slow news day, Jesse needed something to fill the air, or, you know, here's the story, and here's what we're really doing to you know, take care of the situation. A lot of times, his big thing is billing issues. He's really big into, you know, billing issues and people being ripped off, and but it still doesn't feel good. You know, any company that you're working at, if you've got a gotcha and a Get Jesse story, it still makes you feel like, oh, why is he being mean to us?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why is he trying to dig at us today? What did we do to deserve that? Nothing other than, you know, maybe somebody answering the phone in the billing department could have resolved the issue, but okay, I guess I can resolve it today. So it's interesting what Jesse makes up as these news stories. And now that I say that, when you watch his stories, you'll be like, probably wasn't that big of a deal, you know?
Can I follow up with a question? on
Sure.
that?
Sure.
So how do you stay motivated when you have situations like that where either you feel like you're being attacked or you have to go on the defensive? Like, how do you personally stay motivated so that you are also motivating and able to be transparent and have those conversations with your staff so that they can stay motivated in the face of that challenge?
That is a fabulous question, and I've thought about that. I'm like, sometimes it's like fight or flight. I'm like, all right, I'm fighting this one today. And it almost gives you that intrinsic motivation of like, I'm going to win this one. And I'm going to get it, where Jesse can't, like, at the end of the day, you know, really do that. Gotcha. He always seems to spin it at the end. But I think what I've had to do is almost like, you know, put it to the side and say, he's just doing his job. And I need to stay positive and motivated, and knowing that, you know, I've got a bigger goal in the end. You know, here's the things that we're trying to do. And that's the funny thing is, you know, really a big part of my job right now is enabling the network, getting opportunities to have TV product and high-speed internet product out there. And notoriously it will be like billing or something that I don't manage on a daily basis. So I have to almost separate it and say, okay, this isn't an area that I can absolutely directly influence. You know, I can't go to Ryan and be like, Ryan, okay, next time the phone rings and you give the wrong answer on the bill, we're gonna have to have a little pen and paper conversation, because those folks are, you know, in other states. But remembering, like, okay, what can I influence? What can I do to make change? And sometimes it's just the challenge of those situations too. That, again, sort of that fight or flight. I'm like, I'm gonna win this one. It's that type A. It's like, I need to win this one.
That's awesome. I want to pop back up to the beginning, if that's okay. General leadership question. You talked a lot about your background and your journey
Yeah.
through starting out
Through
after
time.
college, through time. I was wondering if you could,
Give me 1 second.
Turn the tape.
that thing's recording, I think, right there. So
Yeah.
That's cool. All right, we're live.
Okay.
awesome. But we're interested in knowing, particularly in the last few years, since Leadership Tomorrow,
Mhm.
how has your view on leadership changed over time?
You know, that is a great question. So what I love about the program that you're going through is I feel like I am very much like a servant leader. That's really kind of how I like to approach things. And you know, one of the things that we were talking about last week in a really fun roundtable that I got to participate in is we were talking about how digital has changed the world. And so I think I shared with all of you, you know, that I tried to get out and, you know, see all of my technicians at least once a year. The folks locally get to see me more just because it's easy to pop up to Lake City or down to Soto. But one of the things that it's really easy to do is to just, you know, pop off emails and send little communications. And every month we put together, we call it Sue's News, of kind of fun facts and congratulations on service anniversaries and those types of things. And those are really easy to do. But the harder pieces are getting together and working face to face with people. You know, even this meeting, you know, getting all of us scheduled face to face. So I have really made it a point with my folks that are local that we have a staff meeting every Tuesday, and the expectation is that they all come physically face to face to the staff meeting. My two gentlemen in Eastern Washington, obviously, you know, they're allowed to call in, but if they're over here doing business or something, you know, they're expected to come as well. And it's amazing to me what a difference it makes. Sometimes when I'm traveling or we just have to have a quick hit staff meeting, we'll just do a quick conference call. And I can tell it's such a different vibe. Like when we're all on the phone together, you know, we're done in like 25 minutes. And I'm like, was anybody paying attention? I don't think so. But when we're together, we can easily go an hour, and we usually do. And then, you know, we let folks drop off the phone. And then it's the conversation after that is super interesting, whether it's with, you know, all of us, or it's just a group of them talking about something specific, or I'm like, oh, hey, just you Seattle people, we need to talk about X, or has anybody heard this? It's amazing to me the conversation that occurs after we get through kind of all the, you know, briefings and notes. That really makes the biggest impact. And I have to continue to remember that it's still that bringing people together and the conversations that occur because they're there and they're thinking about it, and they're not thinking about something else, or they're not on their phone, or they're not having a sidebar conversation. And I always laugh, you know, when I say, okay, we're going to have a quick staff meeting on the phone, you know, 30 minutes, and we're in and we're out. And then I tease them too. I'm like, I know when we're all on the phone together, half of you don't pay attention, and they laugh. I'm like, yeah, okay, point taken. So
How big is that group?
It is direct reports. It's 12, and then I often will invite our construction and engineering managers, and then usually labor and HR will come as well and kind of brief us on what's going on and changes and things we need to know. So that's the other piece I try to do is to kind of pull all of the stakeholders in and all the folks that are supporting us, because it takes all of us. We're going into another contract year. So in 2017, our union contract will be up. So it's starting, a lot of things are heating up, and a lot of things like now are reminders of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate for the union to be handing out and distributing. So just some of those little things, but it's what happens the morning you come in, everybody's got CWA t-shirts on their desk. Okay, well that's not appropriate. That needs to be called into the hotline. So it's just all the little pieces that really affect our business. We try to pull everybody together.
So to clarify, that your view on leadership, how it's changed over time, even though you've got all this stuff going on, you've got all these people going all these different directions and they're different places, making the time to get people together, to get them on the same page is something that you've, is that something different than in the past, I guess?
Yeah, I think in the past it was easier just to maybe, you know, let people sort of be on the phone, or there's so many more distractions out there. You know, you think about, you know, 10 years ago when you'd be on a conference call, like everybody would be focused on that. They weren't doing email, and they weren't playing on their phone, and they weren't being distracted by Facebook and all those other things out there. It was like, that was how you behaved in business. And now, I'm sure you guys have encountered that too. You're on a call and you're like, hey, Sue, question for you. And they're like, oh, hold on, I have to get off mute. Can you repeat that question again?
Right.
It's like, yeah, okay, you weren't paying attention. So, and I think, you know, part of you know, being, you know, very a servant leader too is you have to kind of understand what are the needs out there, and having that interaction, and you know, sometimes you key on something because somebody else has said something to them, you know, in a sidebar. You know, like, Kate, maybe you say to Brian, you know, gosh, I saw you were working on this truck thing. Did you get it resolved? And it's like, oh, I maybe need to talk to Brian about what is this truck thing that's going on, and is this something that I need to offer some assistance, even though he hasn't brought it to me? You know, there's something roadblock going on. And I always tell my folks too, I'm like, don't let things fester, and, you know, timely escalations, because I can help things before they get to escalation point. But if you don't tell me, or you let it go too long, now it's like this snowball that's gotten so big that it's going to take much more to pull it out.
Thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
Can I ask a follow-up? Yeah,
Yep.
so it sounds like you know, one of the things that resonated with you in the LT program was the concept of servant
Mhm.
leadership, and I'm curious because I see you have the
I have the cheat sheet, sorry.
the framework there.
Gave it to me.
Is just as you were going through the program, what were the things that stood out to you in terms of learning moments
Mhm.
in your own leadership, and how you've since applied those, perhaps, or how you think about those as you're in your role post LT?
Sure. So I'm not fortunate to have gone through the LT program like
Oh.
all of you, but that's okay. I had an employee 2 years ago that did.
Oh,
So
okay.
Teresa Bash went through the program, and so I got to be, I got to go on the journey along with her because we would have a lot of conversations. I'm actually very jealous of all of you that you get to be in the program.
We'll
Once I
nominate you next
once
year.
I
Yes,
can,
exactly.
yeah,
We're all
once-
gonna
once-
nominate
Once I
you.
can breathe and get out of 4th grade math.
That's right.
So I haven't had the opportunity to personally go through the program, but you know, everything that you're learning, you know, when I read through kind of the cheat sheets, I'm like, I just have had such great mentors and leaders that were also very much into servant leadership that I think I was trained that way, if you will. And I think that's so important too, is to have a great mentor and great leaders that you can work with, because I feel like I've gotten more education from them than from leadership training and books and those sorts of things, because you're kind of living it every day with them. You know, and when you make mistakes and things, they're like, okay, now how did that work or not work for you? So